Greetings and welcome back to Room 303, AP English, and our St. Martin's Guide to Writing lectures. This is lecture number 2. We're going to be looking now at chapter number 2, Remembering an Event, or what we will sometimes simply call the autobiographical narrative. Now, in some ways, what you did in chapter 1 with your literacy narrative is just such an essay, although, of course, it wasn't really an essay, only 500 words. And here, we're going to become far more focused specifically on a single event that will tell us something important. In fact, let's go ahead now and just quickly walk through chapter 2. And I'm going to start with you on page 13 of your volume. Again, reminding you we're working with the 12th edition. If you're working with an earlier edition of St. Martin's Guide, you're still going to see this basic information provided in the chapter. In this chapter, I'm now just reading with you to make sure that you understand exactly what it is you're supposed to be working on. We have often pointed out in 303 that one of the hallmarks of good writers within the academic community is understanding specifically, explicitly, what the compositional assignment is so that there's no confusion. Let's just look at it. In this chapter, we ask you to write about a memorable event that you feel comfortable sharing. Two things. One, notice it's a singular event. So you're not going to be writing about your high school experience. No. That's way too general. Specific. One event from your high school experience, for example, that you want to focus on. Second observation, one you feel comfortable sharing because, of course, others will be reading this information. So if you're not comfortable sharing certain events from your life, don't write about those events. Choose another event. I'm not sure which event to write about. That's why we jam write. In other words, we sit down and we come up with ideas from that jam writing, which no one will ever see but you. You can then begin to parse out at least 3 possible events that would maybe conform to the information of chapter 2. Notice we continue. From reading and analyzing the selections in the Guide to Reading, pages 14 through 34, that is to say our models, right? You can see how others make their stories interesting, even exciting to read. The guide from pages 35 through 49 will show you ways to use the basic features of the genre to tell a vivid and dramatic story in a way that not only entertains readers, but also gives them insight into the event's significance, its personal and cultural meaning and importance. There are 2 parts to this essay. Write this down now. There are 2 parts to this essay. Part 1, you're going to summarize a narrative event from your life, one that's significant, and, put this in your notes, you will use dialogue several times in the narrative. Okay? 2, at the conclusion of your narrative, you will then discuss in 3 separate paragraphs 3 reasons why this event in your life was significant or important, either personally to you or to others or both. Now let's just walk through quickly the chapter to get a sense of what you will be annotating. Starting on page 14, we will introduce you to the readings, the models. You're going to have 4 of them. Okay? Jean Brandt was going to look back on getting caught shoplifting. Annie Dillard, the great Annie Dillard, is going to recall the consequences of a childhood prank. Coates is going to remember an earth-shaking encounter he had when he was 11. And finally, Desmond Harris is going to reflect on the death of her idol rapper Tupac Shakur. Now, the order in which you read these I leave to you, but I often recommend, especially in your first reading of the models, just follow the way that Axelrod Cooper will lay them out. And pay particular attention not only to the model, which you will be annotating at levels 1, 2, and 3, but pay attention to what they say about the model afterwards. What makes this a good representative of the kind of essay that it is you want to be working with? I want to just pay attention now to 1 or 2 concepts in chapter 2. Notice we'll begin on page 15 with a well-told story. You're going to be telling a story. It's a story about yourself, and therefore that makes it autobiographical. Now notice that this story will have fundamentally 3 divisions. And there I'm looking at this dramatic arc in figure 2.1 at the bottom of page 15. Now, of course, we know this arc well because we have worked with Freytag's famous plot pyramid and all of that. Notice you'll have a beginning, that is to say some kind of exposition, some kind of inciting incident with some rising action leading to a climax, the falling action, and of course some kind of notion, update, or conclusion and reflection. That will be the way in which you will tell the story. Notice on page 16, we're looking for vivid descriptions. I would underscore that word vivid, of people and places. We're going to, as well on page 17, ask about the autobiographical significance. We're looking for remembered feelings and thoughts from the time the event occurred. It does you no good to talk about the passing of your grandma if you can't remember some of the powerful emotions and feelings that were associated with that. The next thing I want to point out is starting on page 18, we're provided with 4 models. Again, you're reading and annotating these models, not just bullet pointing them at level 1, but working at level 2. What does the text say? Themes, messages, focusing on some of the rhetorical techniques specific to whatever essay it is that we're working with. In other words, we'll answer a simple question in 2B. What makes Jean Pran's Calling Home, for example, a good model exemplar for the autobiographical narrative, specifically at the rhetorical level? And again, you're going to get a little bit of help from Axelrod Cooper. After the actual model, beside the model, they're going to provide you with some of that information. We've got Annie Dillard's work on page 22 and following. Notice on page 25 then, they're going to show you why Dillard's essay is such a classic piece of narrative writing, okay? The autobiographical significance of showing and telling at the bottom of page 25. We then will finish the models over from page 26 to continue on page 30 with our final model. Again, the making connections, like at the bottom of page 32, will help you here. Finishing then on page 34. Now let's turn to the actual assignment on page 35. Notice the actual writing assignment. Write about an event in your life that will engage readers and that will at the same time help them understand the significance of the event. Tell your story dramatically and vividly. And we are adding here, make sure you use dialogue. Okay? So we are now going to answer this question. Mr. McGee, we are seniors in high school or freshmen in university college course. We've obviously written an essay or two like this through the course of our high school experience. Can I use a previous essay that I've worked with or an incident? The answer, of course, is yes. However, because we are submitting to turn it in, you must make sure that you've rewritten this experience well enough that turn it in doesn't jack you beyond that 20% threshold data point. All right? So in other words, for you, this may be about going back, looking at prior writing, and going through the editing process to make sure that Turnitin doesn't fault you for self-plagiarism. Now on page 35, just to remind, there will be 2 parts to this essay. Obviously, your login information, you'll have your 2 titles. One is your creative title, the second is your academic title. The reason why, even though MLA Stylebook doesn't require 2 titles, that we use 2 titles in 303, is that we want to demonstrate our creativity. So for example, Fire and Ice might be your creative title. But that doesn't tell us anything about what the actual essay is about. Your academic title will always stipulate specifically what the type of compositional writing will be. In other words, Fire and Ice, and then in parentheses underneath the creative title, a personal, autobiographical, you can use, narrative describing the passing of my great-grandmother in my junior year of high school. That is an academic title, and then we'll get into the actual essay. Now, the actual essay is divided into 2 parts, so it's not going to look like a traditional, as we sometimes call it, 5+ paragraph essay. No, no, no. We're going to begin with, first of all, the telling of a story, a narrative. Now, of course, you can have an introductory essay, paragraph if you want, that kind of lets us know that this is going to be an autobiographical narrative, or you can jump right into the story itself. You want to tell the story. Again, your textbook's going to help guide you to be able to do this well. You want to tell the story. Make sure you use dialogue, right, at some points in the story. That's the first part of the story. Take as many paragraphs as you need to tell the story or the narrative of a single event in your life that was for you significant. Okay? The second part of the essay is the last 3 paragraphs. Okay? So the last 3 paragraphs will constitute the 3 reasons why this event was significant in your life, both to yourself and maybe to others as well. All right? You needn't worry about a final concluding paragraph after those last 3 paragraphs. Those last 3 paragraphs, though, are significant for scoring your essay in terms of the expectations. Okay? Finally, pages 35 through 53 will walk you through the detailed suggestions on this assignment. Pay close attention to them. Students have found they save a lot of time and energy by letting Axelrod Cooper walk them through the assignment, suggestions and the like. For example, pay particular attention to the proofreading or the grammar suggestions. For example, if they give you a suggestion when you're writing an autobiographical narrative about thinking about tense, you're writing in the past tense versus the present or the future tense, you want to pay attention to the ways in which that construction needs to happen the most elegantly way that you can do it, all right? So pay attention, use the textbook well. The challenge, of course, is, what am I going to write about? Begin with your jam writing. Ask the simple question in your jam writing. What one event would I love to go back to in my life and experience it again? Or, in your jam writing, I'm going to write for 20 minutes and I'm not going to stop writing on this topic. One event, if I could do it in a time machine and go back and change it entirely, I would. Sit down and write about the possibility of any number of events in your life which, looked at from now this perspective, you have to admit, had an influence on my life, changed me in some way. Now let's point out, as our models will demonstrate for you as well, sometimes these are like seemingly insignificant moments in the moment. It's only after the fact that one goes, oh, what Tennyson says in Ulysses, and we've lectured that elsewhere, I am part of all that I have met. Yet all experience is an arch, where through gleams that untraveled world as margin fades forever and forever when I move. That is to say, everything in our lives is somehow significant. It's all a part of the pattern, the bigger pattern. And yet, we're going to choose one event, we're going to write about that event, and we need for that event to have some dialogue as well. There may be some events in your life that you want to write about, but they don't conform well to the expectations of the assignment. They're too personal. Stay away from a moment like that. No dialogue can be included. Stay away from that. Find another one. That's why I recommend that in your listing you come up with at least 3 to 5 possible significant moments in your life and write about one of those and be sure that it is in fact specific. If you have any questions, obviously we will enjoin those as well. I wish you the best of luck in the first of your major writing assignments, Remembering an Event, Chapter 2. Thank you.